heard the theory about the ex-girlfriend. Every single time you want to settle down in life, she comes into your life. Every single time you think, okay, here I am today, going to get married, she comes into your life again. And then you decide, okay, I am going to get married. She comes to your life again. And that puts your life in limbo. There is an ex-girlfriend in this government as well. Do you want to know who it is? The former governor of the central bank, Arjuna Mahendran himself. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Tonight it's all about ex-girlfriends and it's all about where is the country really heading. Today I want to talk about a little bit about what happened since the 27th of February. 9th of March 2015, news broke about a central bank bond issue. There was a controversy that surrounded this problem. What happened? The Prime Minister appointed a committee. Did things settle down? No, it did not. And then the media reported about the controversy. Did things settle down? No, it did not. Then what happened? The issue was at court. Everyone thought everything is going to be hunky-dory. Nothing is going to be discussed further. They thought it's swept under the carpet. Did anything concrete happen afterwards? Yes, of course. The media still started reporting on the issue, just like the ex-girlfriend. You just can't get away. What happened next? The president intervened, appointed a new governor to the central bank. Everyone thought, this is it. We are now going to talk about the former governor of the central bank. Was it the case? The answer is no. People started talking about the former governor of the central bank again. The COPE discussed the matter, put the governor of the central bank, the former governor of the central bank, in the spotlight. Everyone thought, this is it. What happened? It did not stop. The debates took place. Did it stop? No, it did not. The former governor's name keeps cropping up. And then, now, where is the controversy standing today? The president has appointed a commission of inquiry, headed by a former retired Supreme Court judge. Now what is happening? The ex-girlfriend keeps coming back. To discuss all this and more about where the country is heading, we have three eminent personalities, our usual political commentators in our studios today. Let me introduce them to you. Joining us this evening is Senior Attorney at Law, Mr. Gomin Dastri. Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
It's all about ex-girlfriends. I'm not going to talk about any ex-girlfriends of yours, Mr. Dastri.
What about ex-boyfriends?
Ex-boyfriends. We are going to talk about the ex-boyfriends, ex-girlfriends and the state of affairs in Sri Lanka. Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Nice to have you on the show as well, Dr. Vijayawardena, as always.
Thank you.
Joining us this evening is Mr. Rusiripala Thennakoon, joining us this evening as well as a political analyst. Let's start off tonight's show with Dr. W. Vijayawardena. Dr. Vijayawardena, an ex-girlfriend seems like it, just keeps coming back. When will we see an end to this issue? The time starts now.
Well, Samir, it's coming back again and again because of the intricacies involved and also the importance of the issue that you have raised here, because this is, I think, in the history of all Central Bank of Sri Lanka, first time such a scandal on that scale has taken place in the Central Bank, involving a governor as well as some senior officers of the Central Bank. And of course the girlfriend could have been sent permanently for retirement, Samir, had the Prime Minister taken correct action on the very first day the matter was brought to his notice. Because on the 27th of February 2015, when this particular scandalous treasury bond issue took place, immediately after, on the very same day, it was hot news in the market. The entire financial sector was actually angry at what had taken place in the central bank's bond issue, and the news spread just like hot cake on that particular day itself, 27th itself, and the matter would have been closed at that time, and you could have sent the girlfriend back to where she had come from, had the government taken action. But government didn't take action, so government was actually sitting on that, and as a result, until such time the whole issue is resolved by a judicial process, I have to say that the ex-girlfriend will come back again and again.
You say that the Prime Minister should have taken concrete action with regard to this matter. During an event which was held 2 weeks ago in Colombo, I posed a question from the Prime Minister. I asked him, is the former governor your friend? He said, yes, of course, he is a friend. Present governor is also a friend. However, Mr. Ajit Niwad Cabral is an acquaintance only. The Prime Minister's attitude towards issues that plague an institution like Central Bank has put the entire institution at risk. What are your thoughts on this? You've been in the industry for a very long time, 37 years.
We'll have to admit the fact, Samir, that the present government has come to power promising the delivery of good governance to Sri Lanka, which was a noble objective, and everybody liked it, and everybody voted the government, expected that the government would deliver good governance to Sri Lanka. So in the case of a government which is dedicated to delivering good governance to Sri Lanka, it cannot tolerate even a small minor matter, Samir. You have to take stern action in order to eradicate it at the very beginning.
But so why wasn't stern action taken?
That's the thing. I mean, that was the mistake that the government made. I mean, that is why day by day it became more becoming bigger and bigger issue, and as a result now it has become a big problem for the new good governance government in Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Jayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, has approximately 37 years under his belt at the Central Bank of the country. The highest authority as far as the monetary law of the country is concerned. I now move my attention to Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon, a political commentator, as well as an individual who's been very vocal about the central bank bond controversy. Now, the issues that surrounded the bond on the 27th of February has given you some publicity as well, somewhat. And now you are launching a book, I hear, on the 27th of February, which is called The Tale of Bonds. Why a book? Is that really necessary? You think people don't know about what is happening in the country?
Samir, I think thanks to the media stations in this country, both print and electronic, this is one matter where the interests of the public was aroused to such an extent that everybody was interested to know what exactly they were being told about. So this issue, the issue about the central bank treasury bonds, was something very new to the general public, because the general public, they have hardly any dealings on of this nature, buying or selling bonds. You know, they have been done at a very different level, at an elite level of the society, and the large number of the majority did not have any sort of knowledge about it. But thanks to the media intervention, there was a created interest in the public. They wanted to know what this is about, what they are talking about. So now, I think most of the publicity and the sort of the discussions went through the English media. I thought the Sinhala speaking people in this country also should know the intricacies, the involvements in this whole episode, what really has happened, and what they should know as members of the public. So I thought I will collate all the information that has been surfaced so far. Now there are so much. I think writing a book on this matter, Samir, is the most difficult thing. The Parliament of Sri Lanka, when they produced the COPE report, that went into 13 volumes, running into about 4,000 pages. So if one needs to examine the verbatim evidence that was given and the discussions that took place at the COPE committee, it's a very, very big task. But anyway,
you say, Mr. Tendakon, that people were not really aware of what a bond was prior to the 27th of February 2015. I recollect the tsunami that took place in Sri Lanka and the coastal belt of many countries in the region on the 26th of December 2004. People did not even know how to pronounce the word tsunami at the start.
Correct.
However, now people are aware. Do you think that the central bank bond controversy is something like that? Is it so grave that people will never forget?
A little different is that in the case of tsunami, there was a vast damage visible that could be seen. Here, it was not visible to that extent unless it was shown in that form. So that is the only difference. But people, as you rightly say, as time goes on, they will get to know what it is, and they will, with their inquisitiveness, they will try to go to the bottom of it and find out what exactly has happened.
Well, there was many public property. The estimated damage from the tsunami stood at billions. And now you have the central bank bond controversy. One day, few hours of trading, Sri Lanka lost billions of rupees.
Yeah.
What sort of impact would it create in the future?
It is not a question of the government or the country losing in one day some amount. This is a continuous thing. For the next 30 years, during the entire period during which the validity period of this bond, the country will lose, continue to lose. So that is, therefore, this is an unprecedented thing. You can't compare it to anything else. And besides, we have seen now who has been the who has gained out of this. One particular company related to the governor of the central bank has made huge profits out of it.
Thank you very much.
That is the difference in this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusiripala Tendakon, for your thoughts in the first round. I recollect a few months ago, the governor of the central bank, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, said that he has taken steps to curtail trading activities of perpetual treasuries, the company in which was involved in the central bank bond controversy on the 27th of February. Media institutions, media personnel grilled the governor of the central bank to tell the country as to what steps he has taken. However, the governor of the central bank did not utter a word. However, there is a development today. Perpetual treasuries had gone to the appeal court, seeking a writ to nullify the order issued by the central bank to curtail its business activities. One thing is for sure, the governor of the central bank has done something right. Let's now move our attention to Attorney at Law, Mr. Govind Dashri. Nice to have you on the show, Ms. Dashri. Committees being appointed. We've seen this over the last 10 years or so. Presidential commissions being appointed. Committees being appointed. We see that from the present regime as well. The president intervenes nearly 2 years after the central bank bond controversy took place. And then he appoints a committee, a Supreme Court Judge, K.T. Chitrasiri, P.S. Jayawardhan, and retired Deputy Auditor General K. Villapillai have been appointed as members of this Commission of Inquiry in question. And what would happen next? I am rather pessimistic about it. Another committee. Why?
You are not only pessimist, I think you have a sense of impish humor by referring to boyfriends. Come on, Shamir, I think you got to have confidence. Look, we have had committees, we have had commissions, but who was appointed to it? That is what is important. Now we have two of the best of the Supreme Court judges. K.T. Chitrasiri, everybody knows who he is. He is an absolutely daredevil person who wants to get the truth, who is interested in the law. No one will accuse him of any partisanship. I have known him. He was a person with a lot of reputation. He was a registrar of companies. The last government tried to appoint him as the head of the Inland Revenue and was opposed by the officers of the Inland Revenue because it was one place that needed cleansing. He is capable of doing that. And the other person, another Supreme Judge of great eminence, Prasanna Jayawardhan, man who knows company law, one of the clever young lawyers who have been appointed as Supreme Court Judge. The third is supposed to be, I don't know him at all, but from all accounts, he's a very reputed, very honorable, and a person who will painstakingly search for the truth. Now compare these three gentlemen with the three of those musketeers that were appointed by the Prime Minister. Now when such people are appointed like Chitrasiri, Prasanna Jayawardena and this gentleman from the Auditor General's department, remember, I believe the Auditor General himself would have had a part in his selection, because I think the present Auditor General is somebody we can all be proud of. I mean, unlike the Commission of Elections, I was very proud of him after the holding of the presidential elections. But now he looks, I mean, he's more humorous than active. So in that sense, here are three people, eminent, who have their own reputation at stake. Now look at the scenario so far. You did the countdown. You said nearly 2 years, 1 month short of 2 years has taken place from the bond. No finger has been pointed. We had three reports. The COPE report, and still better the Auditor General's report, that is better than any forensic examination. And third, the Central Bank report. Three reports, nothing has come out of it. All that has happened is it is supposed to have been forwarded to the Attorney General. We have had many commissions in this country. Commissions have been there from years on. But what matters is who is going to be appointed to the commissions. Are they people who have their own reputation at stake? Here are two people, I can assure you, who are waiting on the wings to be the next Chief Justice. Someday or somewhere I hope they would be. Better later than never. Now such people will definitely wouldn't take on an assignment of this nature just to fool around, because their reputations will completely damaged. So I think with the time frames, and you remember what would have happened if we went to court. We have gone to court with so many matters now in court, FCID. FCID files cases. I have seen the last government filing excellent cases by the TID against the Tamil Rehabilitation Organization. What
would these commissions do, Mr. Ashri?
They will investigate. They can have day-to-day sittings, not one sitting or 3 sittings a year. That's what the courts will do. Charges have been filed by the Attorney General, but not a single bit of evidence has been present. Don't say for a moment that Attorney General's department is incapable. I have appeared in the war crimes of this country before Udulagama. There was a state counsel, senior state counsel, Kodagoda. He did a wonderful job, 13 cases.
Let's say they meet up every day and recommendations are filed. Then what?
The recommendations are filed, the recommendations then go to the President. The President has a duty to send it to the Attorney General, and Attorney General can, before or after the Commission or while the Commission is in process, still file action. But this is fast track. I'm not a supporter of this government by any means, but I give all credit to the President for taking this initiative, because for once, he might find his Prime Minister in trouble, he might find various other important people in trouble. But so far, look at the last committee, just compare. Did people have confidence in that? Do people have confidence in Chitrasiri?
But people had confidence in the COPE report in question. Now you had a debate, why not then act on that, Mr. Dastri?
So
why have another committee? Why waste time?
You cannot, here is a committee that will hear evidence that will be made public. Last time we had a commission, the Commission to War Crimes. Sirasa televised the whole show from morning till evening.
The question is very simple, Mr. Ashri. You had the COPE gaining evidence, publishing the evidence in question, debating this in Parliament. Why another committee to do the same thing again?
Yes, but the difference is this committee can...
What's the difference?
This committee is it is in the public knowledge. It is in public realm.
You had the public representatives talking about
representatives, but public representatives didn't hear. The public didn't hear the evidence. Now here the public can hear the evidence. Public can tender evidence. Any member of the public, but more so, Shamir, the fact is they can make recommendations, and remember, recommendations flowing not from some parliamentarians, from the Supreme Court. You are reaching the highest point, the apex court, right in stage 1. Otherwise, you will have a case in High Court, it will go to Appeal Court, Supreme Court, it will be next generation that will hear the verdict.
I'm grilling you with regard to this issue in question, simply because we saw President Mahinda Rajapaksa also appointing committees of eminent personalities. He appointed Right Honourable Sir Desmond De Silva. He appointed the chairman as the chairman of the council to advise the Disappearance Commission. He appointed Sir Geoffrey Neese and Professor David Crane as the members. People said, this is it. President Mahinda Rajapaksa has made the right move, appointed an advisory council to look into the disappearance commission in question. What happened? Nothing.
Don't say that.
Would this committee also be of that sort?
Let us look at two committees that you are talking. LLRC. What happened? What happened? The public, the NGOs and the foreign government said that's a whitewashing committee. The report was published, and what did say? Super committee.
What happened? Okay.
What happened is the government of that day presented that report in a condensed form, what is called point form, to Hillary Clinton. She looked at it and said, "This is wonderful."
But what happened?
What happened was Lalit Virakon, who was going to implement the report, did not follow up.
There you go. No implementation. So what is the point of appointing a committee if that's the case?
But the point is, at the moment, even that is not happening. Are you accepting that committee of 3 members report as valid? Does anybody have any respect for it? But here are 3 judges, 3 very eminent people giving a report. If the report is published, now that is very important. Now we have the right, that Information Act. Under that, it is possible for public to ask that report to be published. Publication is important because they can point fingers, they can say, these are the guilty people, these people are responsible for the loss of so much of wealth or capital of the country.
Thank you very much.
They can do all that. But the thing is, these reports must be published. Now the LLRC report was published, the Paranagama report where Dr. Desmond De Silva was published. Publication of report gives public knowledge of it, but unfortunately the war crimes report was not published.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashri. I need to leave you at that for the moment. However, during the course of tonight's show, we will be grilling you on the implementation of project commissions and their reports in question. Ms. Dashri spoke about the LLRC report, what has happened. Ms. Dashri spoke about the Paranagama report, what has happened. All those things are to be discussed on the show today. Committees alone, commissions alone, is that enough? Or must the government take a proactive approach and look into these matters before it happens and appoint the right people to lead institutions of this sort? For you, some thought while you're watching this show tonight. On to my right is Nadim Majid as always. On to my left is Chaturang Aparachi. On to my far left is Faraz. What must I call you? An ex-girlfriend to the government? Let's start on the Tonight Show with you. Yes.
Thank you. Actually,
you just keep coming back to the limelight every single time we speak about the bond transaction.
Yes, but actually your choice of descriptions of an old girlfriend is highly inappropriate. You should have said boyfriend, current. But, you know, that's just playing to the gallery. But anyway, what I'd like to ask Mr. Dashri, please.
Yes, Mr. Bond.
We have the Monetary Law Act and we have the Monetary Board. And we have the governor of the central bank, who is the chairman of the monetary board. Now, there is no role in the running of the central bank by the minister in charge, the subject of the central bank. In this, ordinarily the Minister of Finance, but in this government, the Prime Minister as Minister of Economic Development. So when the Prime Minister comes to Parliament and quite unprompted declares that it is he who instructed the governor of the central bank to change the system in which the bonds were being awarded, we then have to consider the statement made at some point by the governor of the central bank that he was merely following the instructions of the Prime Minister. But there is a legal problem there, because the Prime Minister has no role to play in running the central bank. He can say what he wants, but the governor of the central bank has an obligation to go back and report to his monetary board, his colleagues there, make a decision and then go back to the central bank and run it. So on that basis alone, haven't we wasted so much of valuable time and energy by going to this committee and that committee, when in black and white, for all to hear, the Prime Minister says I ordered him to do that. Well, he shouldn't have done it. Hasn't that been a monumental waste of time?
It's more than a monumental waste of time. You must also consider what your boyfriend just said before, namely that the governor of the central bank had even refused to answer questions. That shows he's a very timid man, though we expected him to be a strong character. Because if he was a strong character, he need not answer these questions now that he's called upon to answer in court. He could have said it to the public. And those are powers that a public servant or a high official, a protected animal by the Constitution, should do. Like the Auditor General, the Governor of the Central Bank.
I'm glad you mentioned Auditor General, because here we have the Auditor General who is at the receiving end of criticism from the Minister of Finance about releasing a report to the Chairman of COPE. But this Auditor General didn't do what Arjuna Mahendran did and merely comply. He came out fighting, and he said, no, there can be no secrets between the Chairman of COPE and the Auditor General of Sri Lanka.
Precisely, that is why I brought that example. He is a man we can be proud of, while the Governor of the Central Bank, I think the Prime Minister even killed him by saying he's my friend. I think he's a true friend, he's a great friend, because he doesn't say that has he said, I refuse to comply. What must he do? He must do the proper thing, the correct thing by the laws and by Sri Lanka's monetary requirements. He need not follow the advice of the Prime Minister. He could well have said, I don't care two hoots for the Prime Minister, but he needn't be rude. That is been rude. I wouldn't advise him to do that. But he could have said, I did what is required to be done. But he, not only that, he's too scared to answer the critics. Ask what he just didn't keep mum. So I think we all praised. I have on this program said it's a great thing to have the person like Mr. Kumarasamy, because he came with a good reputation. He still has a very clean reputation. But the fact is, he is not a strong public servant. That is what is needed, a public servant who will stand up like in the old days where judges, civil servants stood up to politicians and put them in the... Here is a man who is another yes minister kind.
But Mr. Dasri, the problem here is that the country seems to be going round in circles, or being led around in circles by the Prime Minister and his team, because when the real problem is that the beginning of this entire bond transaction was flawed, and it was flawed by the Prime Minister's own admission that he ordered the change, and the changes that he ordered were not in fact ordered as by the Monetary Board, as envisaged by the Monetary Law Act. So why have these rules and regulations when you are the paragon of good governance, or
now,
you claim to be?
Who was can I know who exactly was the particular governor at the time the orders were given?
Arjuna Mahendran.
So if that is so, it is Arjuna Mahendra's duty to do what is right by the country, right by the monetary law. And it is the duty of Mr. Kumarasamy, if it is wrong, to revise it and put it back into order.
No, but he has taken action, isn't it?
But the problem here is that there is no admission, and the Prime Minister just continuously misleads the country, because he says that, for example, one such thing is, he says that the Supreme Court looked into it. The Supreme Court didn't look into it. The Supreme Court looked into an application made, amongst others, by Chandra Jayaratne, asking the Supreme Court to direct the Monetary Board to have an independent inquiry. That is what they asked for. The Supreme Court, unlike in the bond case, didn't actually go into the whole matter.
You're quite right. Supreme Court never went into the matter, but Chandra Jayaratne and two other busybodies entered the court and got an order against them because the relief they sought was wrong. But what happened was Mr. Mahendran, I don't know whether the Prime Minister did that, certainly Mr. Mahendran...
Oh, well, the Prime Minister did, and he was at the AmCham meeting right. Being questioned by Shamir. He says that we did this and we did that, and he says, and the Supreme Court looked into it. He's trying to create an ambience that the Supreme Court looked into it, but they didn't look into it.
No, Supreme Court, actually the Supreme Court in such instances can take action if the Prime Minister is even misleading a country, but they don't normally do that. But because it's not, probably, I mean, you don't want to have the executive and the legislative fighting over these things. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think you can blame Mr. if the order was given to Arjuna Mahendran, it was duty of him to check whether the correct process was being enforced, not merely to follow the instructions of the Prime Minister.
Would you agree that when one examines all the facts, that Mr. Mahendran was completely out of his depth because senior banker or whatever he was, actually headed some investment unit, but he was completely out of his depth just because the minister in charge says, well, do it this way, he just simply meekly curls up, goes in and carries out his instructions without any regard for the laws of this country. Perhaps he was not aware of the laws of this country because he's a Singaporean national. No,
the real thing is, I think he should have consulted the monetary board. It consists not just him, but it consists of a group of people who are deemed to be eminent. They should have considered it. And later on, I think if as Shamir says, I was not aware that if Mr. Kumar has corrected the process, very good. But he must say it. He can't keep mum.
But there are information that is very sensitive. Dr. Vijayawardena, what do you think? The role of the present governor of the central bank. Ms. Astri said that the individual should be a strong personality, a strong individual, and then says that Dr. Kumaraswamy is a yes minister kind of an individual. Do you agree?
Well, of course, not to the extent which Mr. Gomindasri has said, because I know on many occasions he has refused to carry out the orders of the government, but he had also yielded to the pressure coming from the government as well. So therefore, it's a mixed character. Sometimes he has been very strong, and sometimes he has shown that he is not the strong man to carry out the functions of the central bank. But of course, on average, I can say he was better than the previous governor.
On an article published by you on the 13th of June, you said that the monetary board should be more mindful of its obligations.
Exactly.
Given the present context, Dr. Vijayawardena, do you think that the monetary board has done its obligations?
Well,
has
yes,
fulfilled its obligations?
after the appointment of the new governor, the monetary board has actually risen to its own obligations now. And I can say that the action that they have taken on many occasions, it has proved that monetary board had not been subservient to the governor of the central bank, because they have taken a very strong action. And when the first report, the leak report on the on-site examination of the perpetual treasuries, it was in public domain, the monetary board considered it, and they issued a statement saying that they were actually the monetary board was concerned, the word used by concerned by the disparity in the trading activities by a particular company, referring to the perpetual treasuries. And also monetary board said that we are waiting for the final report, and once the final report is submitted, you take action. So the final report was submitted to the monetary board, and the monetary board has taken action on the basis of the final report now. I mean, the market says that there are about 11 sanctions that have been imposed on perpetual treasuries by the monetary board, which should completely destabilize the operations of the perpetual treasuries now as a primary deal in the market.
Dr. Vijayawardena, given what happened today in the Court of Appeal, Perpetual Treasury is going to the Court of Appeal to seek a writ to nullify the orders issued by the central bank to curtail its business activities. How do you view this? Do you think this is a victory of the central bank governor? Because he said initially, 3 months ago, that he had taken steps, and people started criticizing him, saying, say it openly if that's the case.
No, the problem with the governor of the central bank, Samir, was that he didn't come out with his own story because he didn't want to release it to the market. But the people in the market knew from the very beginning the type of 11 sanctions that had been imposed on the perpetual treasuries. Now, of course, when one sees the plea which the perpetual treasury has made to the Court of Appeal, they will be able to know exactly what kind of sanctions that they had been issued. But of course, any citizen of the country has a right to go back to the courts. So therefore, I don't see anything wrong in what the perpetual treasury has done. So let the courts will decide whether the central bank has followed the correct procedure when it imposed those sanctions on the perpetual treasuries.
Mr. Tenakon, I have a question for you. Now, all of us seem to be talking about this ex-girlfriend issue. But when it comes to looking at the former governor of the central bank from the government's point of view, when this particular ex-girlfriend has caused this much of losses to the country, and when there is an amount that will continue for 30 years taking place with regard to this incident, can the government, which is now has promised transparency, action against corruption, so on and so forth, let this particular ex-girlfriend go? That is question number one. Second question is, when this is taking place, we hear media reports that the former governor of the central bank has been present at a meeting on the 5th of November last year at the Ministry of Finance, and he has been having many posts in the current government. Can things like this also happen when there is an incident against this person at present?
This is a very, very unusual situation from the very beginning. You know, we were discussing about the question, the issue, where the Prime Minister himself admitted in his first speech to the Parliament on the 27th of March, on the 17th of March, that it is I who instructed the Governor of the Central Bank to refrain from the direct placement issue and go for auctions. See, now this can be viewed in two different ways. Well, it can be an opinion expressed by the Prime Minister to the Governor of the Central Bank for him to take the necessary action thereafter to implement it properly in the context of the laws that are applicable to the central bank. So what the governor should have done is, he should have reported the matter to the monetary board, and the monetary board should have considered whether that decision could be implemented or should be implemented. And they should have taken a decision. That, to our best of our knowledge, with all the controversies, even to date, the Monetary Board of Sri Lanka, the Central Bank, has not taken a decision to do away with the direct placement system. To date, let the people know this. Now, if this is a thing that has been done sporadically to permit a certain event to take place, so it could have been done with the knowledge of the Prime Minister. How do we know? That's one way of looking at it. One is he just gave a direction which was not converted to legally implementable manner. Or on the other hand, it could have been something, a part of the thing. You know, now in the end what has happened? In the end, with all these complications, what has really happened is, one particular company related to the governor of the central bank has gained, whereas all the others have been left high and dry. So therefore, I don't know if this is a planned affair, if everybody was in it to see that this end result happened the way that they wanted.
Mr. Tenukon, do you think that there will be any result from any positive results from the Presidential Commission of Inquiry?
I don't see any reason why we should sort of conjecture about it, because this is a very important commission, very high-powered commission. In fact, it is a legal process that has to be taken in the context.
So, Mr. Tenukon, you were a former unionist as well. We were talking to, Shamir was talking to Mr. Dastri about various presidential commissions that have been appointed over the years.
Yeah.
Just in the past 5 years, if you go back 5 years, you see many commissions. There was the commission to investigate the Valikada prison riot, where several inmates were killed. There was the, as a unionist, you'll remember this, the Katnayaka Free Trade Zone demonstrations, where a young man by the name of, I think he was 22 years old, Roshen Chanaka, and he was killed. There was the commission that was investigated to look into the Ratupaswala protests, the violence that broke out there. Nothing ever happened to any of these. These are also very serious incidents. Why should we expect any different from this commission?
There is a difference in this case. I see a difference because this is a culmination of a series of events that have taken place prior to the appointment of this commission. There were so many other committees of inquiries and investigations that went into the matter before this commission was appointed. And this final decision was taken by the highest authority in the country after all these other processes have failed. 2 COPE committees, 1 Prime Minister appointed committee. Then there were so many other, central bank investigations. all kinds of things when we have seen this. But this, in the finality, what has happened is, the President, having observed all this, he was convinced that none of these committees of inquiry or investigations could lead to a conclusive decision. Therefore, he appointed this committee.
Mr. Dayasri, you said that you cannot find fault with the Attorney General's department because they are fantastic and they are doing a very good job with whatever resources they have. But when you look at this issue, very soon it's going to be 3 years.
No,
2015, 16 and 17.
2 years.
Sorry, 2 years.
2 years.
It's going to be 2 years since the first bond scandal. Don't forget there was another one in 2016 as well.
Now,
if the Attorney General's department is efficient and is doing its work, as you say, shouldn't the Attorney General have filed charges by now? Based simply on further investigation that could have been carried out based on the information that came out in the COPE report, the unpublished COPE report of the previous Parliament. There was a lot of evidence that was brought out by these two reports. And also now we have the Auditor General's report to add gravity to it.
I think
what more does the Attorney General need to make a decision?
I think you have misunderstood me. I said in one particular case, that is the war crimes case, a particular senior official from the Attorney General's department did a wonderful job. And my position is Attorney General's department is incapable of doing this job, but there are still certain officials who have the capacity to do so. So you can't say everybody in the Attorney General's department is weak, but most are, and that is the reason why I say that some of these matters, some of the matters that FCID is now investigating against certain members of the joint opposition have not surfaced. So my position is that the Attorney General's department is incompetent, but it has very good officials, like the case. They did 13 cases in 13 months. So that is possible, and you had one sitting in the morning, one sitting in the afternoon, and that is how those commissioners acted. So my position is that in this particular case, it is not the Attorney General's department that is material, as in the war crimes case. You have the defense counsel, you have the prosecution, which is the Attorney General's department. You must have counsel for the judges also. They must have assistance. Then the Bar Association was represented. So there was a whole series of persons, lawyers who were participating. Then there were the observers from abroad who were there. Like Darusman was supposed to be there, he never came there. But there was a team of officials and their legal advisors. So if all these parties get involved in this exercise or in a war crimes exercise, we could have a final decision that is worth it, provided the officers who are investigating, like Prasanna Jayawardena, Mr. Tilakasiri, and the officer from the Attorney General, high-powered team like that, whom people have confidence, not like the committee that the Prime Minister appointed. Then the final result has to be published. If it is not published, you have the right to Information Act. Now you can seek it. Seek the report.
Can I mention something? You know, 2 years ago, when this incident initially occurred, it was the President that first issued a statement saying saying he has instructed the Secretary to the President to appoint a committee to investigate this. But then immediately after that we received a statement from the office of the Prime Minister saying that he has appointed a committee.
So it's a pure case of the President succumbing to the Prime Minister.
So 2 years later now we're getting the President's committee.
Yes, 2 years later, but the thing is, at least we have a time frame. They will have to give the report in 3 months.
But if it had been done 2 years ago, if the President had not succumbed to the Prime Minister, let's say, and appointed his committee, then that bond scandal of 2016 could have been escaped.
Yes, but also 2 years ago you may not have Mr. Chitrasiri and Mr. Jayawardena on the Supreme Court. You know, you might have had a different set of people whose reports may not have carried the same validity or the same strength and veracity that these two gentlemen and the present third party, namely the gentleman from the Auditor General's department.
I hope they do justice to the faith that you have in them.
I believe so. I have had a lot of faith. I know them personally. I have appeared before them. They have held against me many times. But I have faith in the three, because if this operation fails, then the judiciary will fail immensely, and they have to do it, and they will do it.
But
that's my belief.
Mr. Dasri, there appears to be a joker in the pack, though, and that is what level of confidence should the public have when the governor of the central bank, Dr. Kumaraswamy, says that he has referred this matter, parts of it, to the IGP. Now, the IGP is the person who was on a telephone call to somebody obviously senior to him, promising that no arrests will be made ahead of an investigation.
Now, that is why I kept saying that this present, whoever you said it was the governor of the central bank.
Yeah.
Well, if he has sent it, is a very foolish thing to have done, because you have a forensic report from the Auditor General, and you have a report from the COPE, and you have a report from the central bank itself. So I don't know why he sends it, because that's going to be a dead end. Are you sure he sent it to the Attorney General or to the... If he sent to the Attorney General, there again is a problem.
No,
Attorney General may
gone to the police.
well sit on it. Now we have seen FCID has sent excellent, probably, I have seen the TRO report, where the TID, the Terrorist Investigation Department, sent excellent report.
Thank you very much.
Never prosecuted.
We need to go for a short commercial break, Faraz and Mr. Dasri. But you say a joker in the pack.
Yes.
Do you know that there are 225 of them in Parliament?
Well, that's
We're now going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's Face the Nation. When I spoke about the ex-girlfriend, I never knew that Chaturanga, Faraz and Mr. Dasri would be stirred. I honestly don't know why. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's Face the Nation. Next break onwards, we won't be speaking about ex-girlfriends. We'll be talking about stable affairs in Sri Lanka and where is this committee in question is really heading. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Let's start off the third round with Senior Attorney at Law, Mr. Gomin Dasri. Mr. Dasri, not done yet with regard to the committees and their activities and the recommendations. What can these recommendations really do? Can we go to court with it? Can the committee members ask the Auditor General's or Attorney General's Department to take action on this? Can that be done?
As far as you see, it's a two-pronged attack. It is reported that these reports have gone to the Attorney General. Attorney General can now wait till the commission is over or immediately file action if it thinks that there is material. Then once the recommendations are made, it is sent to the President. President is under obligation to send it to the Attorney General, who must then act upon that advice, because it comes from the Supreme Court judges and a third member who is also Auditor General. He is bound to frame charges if any recommendation is to that effect.
Right.
Now I will give an example of that. This happened in the case of the war crimes, and in that, with regard to the Trincomalee 5, that was death of a student, there was clear indication that there were wrongdoers. The papers, I know, went to the Attorney General because they questioned me also on regard to the Muttur incident, because I was counsel in that. S.L. Gunasekara was the counsel in the Trincomalee 5 murder. But Attorney General never filed action, never took any steps. And I know that the Prime President sent, because otherwise the police officers would not, or the accused would not have been questioned. But as far as I know, there was no action taken. Now that is the problem. That is why I said in answer earlier, I am not satisfied with the Attorney General's Department officials, because there are few who are very good. Now in that particular case, all those 13 charges were proved on or disproved. In that, what happened was 12 of the 12 cases failed. There was no evidence. They didn't find any fault with the forces. But the 13th case, there was a finding against STF. But that case, as far as I know, no action was taken. But what happens is...
But when there is no action being taken, I want to drag your attention
Yes.
to 2006 with regard to the Trincomalee
Yes.
massacre of NGO workers that took
Yes.
place. PM Bhagawati, who
Yes.
was the former Chief Justice of India, arrived in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And I happened to have interviewed him exclusively. He left the country saying that he was disappointed because no action is being taken with regard to his recommendations that
No.
have been made.
That he went long before the recommendations were made. He went before even the evidence was recorded. I was counsel
Because
in
he
that
was
case.
not satisfied with the way in which investigations were taking place.
Yes, but he should have waited, because he made accusations at everybody. He made accusations at the commission, he made accusations at the police, he made accusations against the medical profession, he made accusations against the ballistic mission. And another person who made equal complaints was Darusman. Darusman had not come to Sri Lanka at all.
What action has been taken since 2006 on that?
That is the mistake I said. Attorney General should have taken action in the Trincomalee
Now
case.
there is a court report in question. It was debated in Parliament just a few weeks ago. Why can't the Attorney General take action on this?
Accusations are there, that is there on record.
Why can't the Attorney General's Department take action?
They can take action. They
Then
should
why
take.
aren't they taking action?
I don't know. You have to ask him.
Then what confidence does the people of Sri Lanka have that the committee report in question, the Attorney General's Department would act on that report in question after 3 months?
The point is, if that is so, Shamil, you must take action against the Attorney General for not taking action. But if the Attorney General is sent all these reports and he takes no action, the public does not know what is the material in evidence.
But in this very same stage, Mr. Govindashri, you said that the former Attorney General did not do his job, and then you said that the present Attorney General, right after he was appointed, that he will do the job. And now you are pointing the finger at the present Attorney General as well.
Yes, because...
So there comes a issue with regard to who will really do the job.
The question is not... Attorney General has a duty, if there is any valid material before him, which as a commission of this nature comes to a finding, to file action. It's another matter. You see, before a commission, all kinds of evidence can be presented. Hearsay evidence, admissible, that is inadmissible, all that evidence can be presented. So you can't have a prosecution, or you can't have a person guilty of a charge. If that is so, that is against natural justice. But in a court of law, it makes the process in a court of law much easier, because all the evidence is elicited.
Let's make it very simple, Mr. Ashwin.
Yes.
Let's put all this bolts and nuts about what law, what constitutionality, all that aside for a moment. 3 months down the line, when this committee in question gives in their recommendations and hands over a particular report to the President, the Attorney General can just wait, and he does not have to take action.
Yes. If
He can get away with it.
He can't, because the public must be vigilant. The public must get involved in it. The public knows what is the evidence, as they knew in the Mutur case, as they knew in the Senchole case. 2 cases I appeared. They were all found not guilty. Public and the NGOs then stopped talking about it. But in the Trincomalee case, they knew there was a guilt, and they were asking for some kind of action to be taken. Now here again, you have not, and that was a committee who sat on it. At certain stage, Manuri Muttegarama sat on it. D. Nesaya sat on it. Udulagama sat on it. Douglas Premaratna sat on it. Javid Yusuf sat on it. But here is these are even more eminent people. 2 judges of the Supreme Court, highly talented, highly able judges. Now their time, they give a finding, and if the Attorney General does not do his job and the public keeps quiet, then the public must be blamed.
Thank you very much.
And the media also. You will have the material. I'm sure you're not going to keep mum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Govindashri. So you mean to say, in very quick terms, that the President waited until the present individuals went on retirement to appoint the committee in question?
No, I won't say that, but I'll say that President is too late, belated. Because as he said very correctly, the President had initiated it and then gone to sleep.
Thank you very much, Mr. Govindashri. I will now move my attention to Dr. W. Jayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. a committee was appointed by the Prime Minister. However, as Nadim correctly pointed out, it was the President who said, issuing a statement when he was overseas, that a committee in question would be appointed. Sorry. My question to you is very simple. What were the terms of reference that governed and that ensured that the investigations took place? I'm referring to the committee appointed by the Prime Minister. What were the term of reference? What did they really investigate?
The issue at hand, Samir, was the particular bond issue that took place on the 27th of February 2015. And the President's direction was to appoint a committee of inquiry to inquire into that particular bond scheme. But the terms of reference that was given to the three lawyers was completely different from what the President has expected. The terms of reference had said that they were to investigate into the bond issues by the central bank from year 2012 to 2015. So, in fact, what the committee was trying to do was to find fault with the previous government, whether there had been any scandalous bond issue during that period, and also they couldn't find any evidence to suggest that also. And the reference to the particular bond issue in hand was just a passing reference. So the committee didn't have
so
the
they were not appointed
TOR.
to look into the 27th of February bond issue alone?
No, that was not. I mean, it was actually to investigate into the bond issues from year 2012 to 2014.
What's this whitewash all about? Why do you want to deceive the public with regard to an issue of this sort, of this magnitude?
Yeah, I mean, nobody at that time questioned, because in fact, you know, the media would have questioned the Prime Minister at that time. Why was such a committee appointed in order to look into the affairs of the central bank during the past period, whereas the matter at hand at that time was the particular bond issue on the 27th of February. So that was a mistake by the media at that time. Media never questioned it, public never questioned it, President never questioned it, parliamentary members never questioned it, and therefore they submitted a report, and in that report what they said was the governor was not directly responsible, but they had pinpointed that the tender board in the central bank, which had judged the particular bond issue, was wrong, at fault.
How do you view the action of President Maithripala Sirisena with regard to the central bank bond controversy and also the former governor of the central bank?
What we have to keep in mind, Samir, is that when the President was sworn in as the President of the Republic, he made an announcement saying that he would actually hand over the administration of the country to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. And therefore he didn't have a direct hand in that, though he was the chairman of the Cabinet of Ministers. And he expected the Prime Minister to act in good faith and conduct the affairs of the Republic, meeting the requirements of a good governance government. And he gave, I think you may remember, warning to the government on two occasions. First occasion was immediately before the general election in August. He came on TV and he said that he had advised the Prime Minister to ask the governor of the central bank to resign, because the particular bond issue has become a big black name for the government. And therefore he wanted the Prime Minister to act on that, but of course the government didn't act on that. The second one was that when the term of the previous governor ended in July 1st of July 2016, President Maithripala Sirisena very boldly announced, saying that he will not reappoint him. So there were two occasions where he gave a very strong warning to government, very strong warning to the people of this country if they had taken it seriously. Therefore, you can't find fault with the President on this occasion, Samir.
Now you say, Dr. Vijayawardena, that two strong warnings was given to the government. My question to you is very simple. Isn't the President the government?
No. In this particular setup, Samir, you have to admit the fact that President said that he would remain as a nominal head. Though he is the executive President of Sri Lanka in terms of the Constitution, when it comes to the administration of the country, he said he was actually relying on the Cabinet of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. But of course what has happened is that the Cabinet of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister had not taken action. So that is why he gave two warnings, two very strong warnings, And it was a matter, I would have expected the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of Ministers to take action on that.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Jayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon, political commentator as well as a civil rights activist. First year running, they spoke of eradicating corruption. 1 month after, there is corruption within the government itself. Second year, topic of discussion is the central bank bond controversy. Third year, central bank bond controversy. Fourth year, will we be discussing the central bank bond controversy again, Mr. Tennakon?
This may not continue that far because fortunately the President has given a time limit to this commission, and he has very specifically mentioned that the matter has to be concluded within 3 months. That is the other speciality about this commission. Normally commissions are appointed and then the commissions take their own time and they take time to give their reports. But in this instance, we should not forget the fact that he not only appointed the committee, he also made another statement. He made a very strong stricture to the Attorney General of this country. In one of his speeches, he mentioned that the Attorney General's department to which the COPE report was referred, the action they had taken was to categorize this issue as a civil issue and not a criminal issue. Therefore, he was not happy with that. For that reason, he intervened and he appointed this commission. So therefore, there are so many things that preceding the appointment of this commission, unlike in the other case. So I don't think that we will have a repetition, we will have this type of thing continuing for the third and the fourth year of this government.
What sort of action would be taken against those who are found guilty? I'm not going to point the finger at anyone here, but what action would be taken against those who are found guilty? You say it's a criminal activity.
Definitely, you know, if you examine the terms of reference of this commission, I mean, this is falling within the presidential inquiry law. This is not a special presidential inquiry. So this is a very old piece of law in this country, and it has very wide powers with regard to the examination of witnesses, the leading of evidence, all that has very, very wide powers. Unlike in a court of law, there will be a lot of variations and freedoms to exercise by the commission. Therefore, this commission, we believe, will exercise all those powers and come up with a report. If the report is, I mean, it has to be a very positive recommendation, action has to be taken.
But there seems to be a bit of confusion with regard to this committee in question, because some say this is a Commission of Inquiry Act, Commission of Inquiry which is enacted based on the Act itself in 1952.
Yes.
Then some say this is a Presidential Commission of Inquiry, which is formed under the Act 1983. There seems to be a confusion with regard to this committee in question.
No, I think...
What exactly is this?
I think Mr. Dasari will be able to enlighten us on this, but then our understanding on this matter is that this is a presidential inquiry, this comes within the presidential inquiry law. Commission of Inquiry. Commission of Inquiry. 1952 Act. So therefore this has very wide powers as far as we can see. So therefore the other thing is the President has specifically given a time frame because he did not want to see that this gets dragged on. This has dragged enough now. He has seen the instances how evasive action has been taken by those in authority to avoid the necessary steps to be taken at different times. Now, the terms of reference of the Committee of Inquiry appointed by the Prime Minister, the committee itself in its report said, our terms of references are limited. Why should we forget these things? These are very fundamental issues to this. The committee itself in its report said, we cannot go beyond the terms of reference because our terms of references have been limited. Nevertheless, we have observed enough grounds in this examination, in the course of this investigation, that further action should be taken or instigated against those responsible. That's what they said.
Mr. Nikon, usually we see the government acting on one voice, the government wanting to do one thing, one direction. Everyone goes follow a leader as a particular herd in question. But when it comes to this regime in question, is there a mismatch between what the president wants to do and the Prime Minister wants to do?
Definitely.
Is there a mismatch between the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister?
We can't get away from this fact. No, this is a combination, very, very unusual combination, which has come up. And we are all waiting to see its survival going through the entire period. They are going with very great difficulties, sailing through with great difficulties. That's a fact. Who can deny that? It comprises of two different parties with two different ideologies, mainly. And it comprises of people who have been brought into the cabinet, brought into the government, who have been rejected by the people. And they call it Yahapalana government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rishibaltanakoon, for your thoughts in the third round. Let's open the floor for questions from our journalists. Let's start off with, everyone is telling me not to give Faraz, but let's start off with Faraz.
Thank you. I think we'll go for Mr. Rusripala here. Now, Mr. Rusripala, you come from a trade union background and so on. And we have instances these days when the second highest court in the country made a ruling and gave its order. And then you found that the people have taken, a group of people have taken to the streets, hoping to overturn the ruling of the second highest court. So in that context, is it not possible for the people of the country to turn up en masse in fort and in front of the central bank and demand that the Minister of Finance impose a special tax on this company and bring this matter, this sad and sordid matter, to an immediate conclusion, like they did with the super gains tax? What do you say?
No, I don't think that actions of that nature is warranted in this instance, because we have to be very patient. In this case, we have a commission of actually, when we look at the whole process of the evolution of the process from the beginning, you see, it has gathered momentum, although very slowly. But finally, in the final episode is that the appointment of the Presidential Commission with a limited time frame gives us enough time to be patient and wait to see.
But
we don't have to jump into things like that, to surround the central bank or do anything like that in this case.
But you say, let's be patient. But according to the Auditor General's report, in the space of just 2 days, they made the losses to the country was 1.6 billion rupees. I'm still waiting for the Guinness Book to tell me whether that's a world record.
Exactly.
So every day that we wait is costing us phenomenal sums of money.
This is what they are inquiring into for us. We can't forget, there are so many things that to be gone into. Take the issue to find out what has happened to the Provident Fund, how the Provident Fund has become a victim in this whole affair.
14 billion.
Exactly. And one company says their total gain in 1 year is 11 billion.
Well, actually just under 13, 12.8.
Yeah. Correct. So you see now you can put one and say that now the Provident Fund loses and this company gains. So we can now presume very easily where this money has gone. So let it be examined. Let it be examined. And no commission of inquiry so far, even the court, has gone into that aspect. But when the commission of inquiry is open to the public, be certain that there will be trade unions, there will be other sections of the society that will bring up these issues. What happened to the Provident Fund? Who bought this? From whom did they buy this? Who sold it? All this will come to light.
But the Minister of Finance disputes he says that these losses have not been quantified. He said that on our network.
I think we have seen this in this finance minister, in his speech, in his debate, participation in Parliament. I mean, he produced a letter, some kind of a letter, and waved it at the people. Utterly meaningless letter. So, I mean, if these are the grounds on which the ministers of this country just play to the gallery. So let us forget about those.
Dr. Vijayawardena, the very same people who are in government today, when they were in opposition during the time of the previous regime, allegations were brought by government ministers, then opposition MPs, about this same individual for certain what they called shenanigans at the Colombo Stock Exchange. When I look back at the history of this bond saga and the people involved in it, right back to that time when these accusations were being raised with regard to the Colombo Stock Exchange and shares being dumped on the Employees Provident Fund, all I'm seeing is missed opportunities on both sides, on politicians on both sides of the divide, and even from the third parties. Unwillingness to take any action against these individuals for whatever reason. Do you see that?
Yeah, I mean,
do you think that there's no real political will and that they're dancing, they're just dancing, they're playing the foxtrot with the public?
What you say is perfectly correct, because if you look at the history of the Employees Provident Fund from around the year 2010, all investments have to be investigated in order to find out how the Provident Fund monies have been misused by people who have the authority to do so. Now, one particular problem with Sri Lanka is that the Provident Fund belongs to the working class of this country, about 9 million accounts, but of course the active accounts about 4 million. So it belongs to 4 million workers. And those workers have been silent, number one. Number two, even though any financial institution has to submit its annual reports, the financial statement within 3 months of the closing of the accounting year, the last annual report of the Employees Provident Fund has been released only with respect to year 2013. Now we are in 2017 today. I haven't seen any trade union asking for the annual report. Not even the opposition members. So what I would gather is that there is an apathy on the part of the workers, apathy on the part of the media, apathy on the part of the opposition parliamentarians, apathy on the part of everybody, so that the things have been hidden. Because if the annual report of the Employees Provident Fund had been released for years 2014 and 2015, it will have to document all the investment it had made, all the losses they have made, and how the losses have been recouped, how the monies in the EPF had been used. That particular information is not available to anyone.
Dr. Vijayawardena, you've been in the public service for decades. You were a former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. We're talking now about commissions of inquiry. I'm sure during your time in the public service, you would have seen, maybe not to do with the Central Bank, but definitely in the various other fields of public service, commissions of inquiry being appointed. Given the track record that this country has with these COIs, do you have the same faith that Mr. Govindasri has, that this commission will deliver results?
Well, of course, subject to the two qualifications Mr. Dayasri had mentioned. One is that the report has to be published promptly. Because whenever we had such a commission of inquiry, Nadeem, they were published as a sessional paper by the government printer. So it was in public domain and everybody can read through it and everybody can refer to it. Number two is that in any democracy, Nadeem, if the people are silent, if the media are silent, civil society organizations are silent, then of course the rulers can do anything they like. So in this case, there's an obligation on the part of the public, obligation on the part of the media, and obligation on the part of the other active groups in the society to take it up and raise their voice. Then only the rulers will have to take action on that. But of course in this case, if they find that the monies belonging to EPF has been robbed through these transactions, I am sure that the trade unions will not keep quiet.
Mr. Dasri, when it comes to, Mr. Dasri,
yes.
When this be a commission of inquiry, a special commission of inquiry or a presidential commission of inquiry, is the difference between the COPE report that was published with regard to the bond issue and this commission report that will come out, is the difference that anyone can take the evidence that is submitted in this commission? Can anyone take that to court and challenge it? Is that the difference?
Very good question. Now you see, in commission of inquiry is constituted under the Commission of Inquiry Act. The Special Presidential Inquiry Act is a different act. That is really used, it has been used only once. That is when that UNP government wanted to take away the civic rights of certain politicians. Now, if you take the civic rights of people found guilty of this, they won't care two hoots about it. They won't have the right to contest elections. I don't think any of these people in this transaction want to contest in elections. They want to make money. So the Special Commission of Inquiry Act is out of the way, though it has nothing to do with it. We are concentrating on the Commission of Inquiry Act, which can make recommendations, and they have to do it within a time period. Now, Mr. Susipal, I think, outlined it very properly and left me to decide what they show the difference. That's why I took this initial step. But it won't be, I don't believe it will be over in 3 months. They can give an extension, give one extension. And these commissioners must, I do not think they would be able to do justice in such a matter in 3 months. 3 months is, I think, give them 6 months, a reasonable time frame. But if you go to court, I don't think there will be even 3 days of inquiry. And you know, counsel are probably the people who are almost all the time when they are not really in a delicate state of health. They'll say they are ill and the case will be postponed for the asking.
You'll eventually have to go to court though. Even with the presidential, even with the Commission of Inquiry, you'll eventually have to go to court, which means that the delays that you're talking about, we're still going to see it. So 6 months of the Commission of Inquiry.
Or can action be taken before it goes to court?
You can, because Commission of Inquiry Act can, if they've come to findings, then they have the evidence, they can have a special court and finish it. Yeah. And they have the idea of having a CJC. Now that has been mooted. CJC is another court that will have to sit day by day. I can remember I appeared in one where they had action against Rohan and JV Randep. It was finished very rapidly. We had about 43 suspects.
But Mr. Dastri, the CJC, one of the main criticisms of that, the Criminal Justice Commission, which is being pushed by a group of cabinet ministers right now, the main criticism back then, it was being used to it was being used to prosecute JVP insurgents. It was a circumvention of due process, and it placed the burden of proof on the party being prosecuted, on the defendant, and not on the prosecution.
Yes, but you can have a CJC with different sets of law. But you have to have whatever it is. Whether
do you think that a Criminal Justice Commission is what we need to settle this bond issue?
I do not think. But you have to have a court sitting day to day, and that there are courts that can sit that way. Why hasn't the government done that? So here we have a commission. Now remember, if you have a CJC, are you going to have 5 Supreme Court judges? If you do so, like in the Vijay Veera case, very good. You have including the Chief Justice H.N.G. Fernando sat on it. You see, you have to fast track it. We have taken 2 years. Are we going to wait till doomsday or never get a finding like in most cases? What is happening here is there's bipartisanship. I think these people are very important players both for the opposition and for the government. Does the opposition make the same noise that you make, the media make, or we make? They are quite happy with what is happening. They don't take the necessary step. That is why the people must get involved. And you see, first of all, you must have confidence in the people who are hearing the case. I have confidence. I think all three of us have some degree of confidence. There are people who we know their track record.
One could even say, Mr. Gomindasri, that you are placing too much of confidence on this commission.
I may be placing too much, but then you must place some confidence in somebody. You can't be negative and pessimistic like my good friend. And what happens? Nothing will come.
But pessimism at the end of the day, Mr. Dastri, has been what we've experienced over the last few years in Sri Lanka. You have to be pessimistic. So only then can we reach optimism and productivity at the end of the day, isn't it?
That is why, whatever said and done, don't you think the CJC that heard Vijay Veera's case did justice? Are you saying that I mean, maybe human rights organizations may say so, but finally they found people guilty, their punishment, and they were rehabilitated, and today they are good Democrats.
Mr. Tennakoon,
it's because people were pessimistic about the previous government. There was change on the 9th of January 2015. Now they were optimistic, and now there's pessimism again. Do you think there needs to be change of regime in Sri Lanka?
No. You see people had a lot of confidence in the government in 2009. They voted for them. Then what happened? The people made them look silly by calling them Maharaja and the King of Kings. He lost his head and he went berserk. And there was corruption. Why it was corruption, it was misgovernance that led to the fall of the government. Now we have another government coming in saying they are going to clean that out, clean everything up. They haven't. So there's once again, what happens? People vote one way and then they vote the other way. They want to teach government lessons, but unfortunately the people don't learn lessons themselves.
Mr. Tenakon, a quick question to you. I'm not going to ask you how much your credit card bill is, but I'm sure it's not 66 million rupees. Public funds, what do you think?
Yeah, now these things we have highlighted even before this commission report came. Now it is in public, in domain. But we have been discussing this very channel. Our channel itself has been talking about this. We have mentioned about the very valuable suit, the cost of the suit, all that we have discussed in these forums many months ago. But these things are now coming to light. Now what happened in this entire thing is, even the officials who went before the COPE committee, you know, how can they go and give evidence when the sitting CEO is the person against whom they are making these accusations? He was never interdicted. He was never sent out even for a day. He was holding position. And how do you expect these officials to go and speak freely? This is what happened. But if you examine the evidence of these two committees, there is a marked difference between the evidence of the first COPE committee and the second COPE committee. Because Arjuna Mahendran was not there. People were free to talk. I have gone through the evidence. The very same person who gave evidence in the first COPE committee has given in much more detail, lot of details in the second inquiry. Why? Because they were free to express. How can you hold a free inquiry? This is against the law of this country. You know, the central bank employees are, according to the Monetary Law Act, they are specially and specifically categorized as people falling within the penal code to be charged as public servants. But the first and the foremost rule in the case of a public employee is, when there is an allegation and an accusation against a public employee, he will first be interdicted.
Mr. Tenakon, let me ask you a very simple question, very simple question. I've been following this TV series on Pablo Escobar, his lavish lifestyle, his spending and all that. Now, let's leave all these commissions aside, let's leave everything aside. With whoever benefited from this spending lavishly, lots of stories going on. Can this money be taken back to the country? Can it be the people's money once again? Or the money that has been spent, millions of rupees that has been spent, billions if not?
Can it be recovered?
This is not spent, this is looted.
Can it be recovered?
I mean,
can it be recovered?
This is not money spent.
There is no use of commissions, committees if not the money if the money is not recovered.
This is misappropriation, illegal use of money, misuse of government funds. You use any term you like. This is not spending.
Can it be recovered, Mr. Tenakon?
It has to be. It has to be. You have to pass special laws and punish these people.
But they're wandering around the corridors of power.
They are, because some people are guarding them, protecting them. That is why the president intervened at the last moment and then appointed this commission of inquiry, which is actually a beginning of the end to this protection.
I'd like to ask you one more question, but it brings to mind what Honorable Bandranaik said some time ago. He referred to Parliament as a circus of clowns. Now, in that context, and you've been a senior banker, to the best of your knowledge, do you think that the central bank has got a creche to look after children?
Look after?
Children, babies.
Crest.
These are things, we have never heard, Faraj. In the history of banking, in the history of good public service, we have never heard this type of thing.
So how do you...
There have been corruptions, there have been exposures of people doing all kinds of bad things, but this is, I think, there is no method to this madness.
So how does one capitalize Pampers then? 22,000 rupees worth of Pampers.
I think if you analyze the expenditure or the spending by this person with public money, I don't think many of the things have come to light.
And a tab that was purchased for Bank House was delivered to some address in Singapore.
Correct.
Fraud.
So many things have come to light.
Is that fraud?
220,000 rupees.
Yeah.
Is that fraud?
Definitely. Definitely it is a fraud. It is a fraudulent. It is a misappropriation of funds. Misuse of funds. It's robbery. In other words.
5 hotel rooms on the same day?
Same day. Same day. So we will not be, we will not be shocked if this person comes forward and say, well, yes, I had to entertain one person in that hotel officially, and while I was occupying this hotel officially on the same day. I mean, he can give such excuses, and there are people to accept such excuses. That is the most unfortunate thing here.
But lots of people have spent time in remand for misuse of state vehicles, state resources. Isn't the credit card of the central bank state resources?
Yeah, there are people without godfathers to look after them.
Could I put in a word, please? Could I put in a word, please? You put a very valid point. Can the money be recovered? Yes, there's a fast track. Yeah. Let this commission give its recommendations.
Yes.
Then remember the case where Mrs. Bandaranayake was deprived of her civic rights. She did not defend herself because she did not have confidence in that particular commission. Commission heard evidence ex parte. Then Mrs. Bandaranayake went to the Supreme Court and got a writ of certiorari squashing that order being wrong, being biased. Then what did Jayawardene do? He brought legislation in Parliament.
Passed another law.
Another law to crush that judgment. The only time it has happened. So here is a shortcut to everything.
Yeah.
Let this commission give its recommendations. Let the Parliament legislate that these offenders should be punished.
I have a question for you, Mr.
Always just like one question.
Yes. I have a question for you, and that question is, I know your profession is not doing the work of an astrologer. I know you're a senior lawyer, but in time to come, in the recent future, will we see at least one person who is responsible for this bond scam being brought before any legal body in our country and being prosecuted?
I doubt. Not because of this government, because of this government and last government. Bipartisanship. That is why...
So then what's the point, Mr. Dayasri?
No, that is why I say there's a way.
Mr. Govindasri, you are being very pessimistic now, aren't you?
No, I'm very pessimistic about the parliament of the government and the opposition. But I'm not pessimistic of the certain individuals, like the media, some of the judges. Don't underestimate. I'm a person who has been very critical of the Supreme Court, but now there are at least of the 9 young judges who are fearless, and you will have a good Supreme Court in time to come.
Thank you very much.
I may not be alive, but you will see it. But last thing is, if they want, if there's a will and there is an absolute determination and people drive the government, they can legislate and find these people
Thank you very much.
offenders.
Thank you very much, Mr. Govindasri, for your thoughts as well. But before I go for a short commercial break, very quickly, Dr. Vijayawardene, there was a deputy governor of the central bank who came to the limelight also with regard to the bond controversy. Where is he now?
He's still holding the position, Samir.
So, isn't action being taken against him?
No action was taken against him during Mr. Mahendra's time, and no has it been taken during Mr. Dr. Indrit Kumaraswamy's time. And when the question was raised to him in one of the recent press conferences, what the governor said was that he has full confidence in the officer, so we have to accept it.
There is a request being made by the Treasury Secretary to appoint an outsider as Central Bank Deputy Governor. How do you view this?
In the whole history of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, there is only one occasion where an outsider has been appointed as a Deputy Governor. That was in 1952 when the Central Bank wanted a special technical expertise. So that they appointed Professor Theodore Morgan of Wisconsin University as the deputy governor, and he had a very limited also reference. He was to introduce the consumer finance survey methodology to Sri Lanka and also the calculation of the national accounts in Sri Lanka. So he did both, and he reverted back to his substantive post at the Wisconsin University, and after that there was no any occasion where an outsider was brought in, even though the Monetary Act does not prohibit the Monetary Board from doing that.
Is there criticism against this move? What is your opinion with regard to this?
Well, of course, if the Monetary Board finds that there are no suitable candidates from within its current rank to hold that particular position, they can make the recommendation that they should bring out somebody from outside, but that should be done transparently.
Will this pave the way for more corruption within the central bank?
It might, so that's why it should be done very openly, and the Monetary Board will have to make an assessment of the quality of the existing candidates for the post of deputy governor and find that they are not suitable, number 2, and number 3, then they will have to advertise, they will have to decide on the qualifications, advertise, appoint a very competent selection committee, then he should be interviewed, and once he is appointed, he has to prove himself that he is better than the people who are inside. So it will actually complicate the matters within the central bank, Samir, because Central Bank of Sri Lanka today is an institution which is largely managed by its own people. We have a large number of young people who have done their PhDs from the best universities in the world. They have come back to Sri Lanka, though they had offers from outside so that they could have served in outside places. They have come back to Central Bank of Sri Lanka because they thought that they had career advancement within the central bank. And if you appoint somebody from outside, what would happen is you are completely demoralizing those people, and they might go out of Sri Lanka and we may be losing them. So if the government wants to bring somebody from outside, it has to take this particular factor into account.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Jayawardena, for your thoughts in the 4th round. Mr. Dastry said that there's always a shortcut. Jayawardena did that when he was the president of the country. And then you have the present regime trying to find a quick buck very quickly. A shortcut indeed. Let's move in for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round of Face the Nation. Welcome back. The final round of Face the Nation. Let's start off the final round with Mr. Rusiripala Thennakoon, who is a civil rights activist as well as an individual who's been very vocal about the central bank bond controversy. On the 27th of this month, that's February, he's going to launch a book, Tale of the Bonds, right?
Yes.
Is there a public invitation? Can the public come and be a part of this show, which is taking place on the 27th?
Because of these logistics issues, I can't make it a public issue. But then we are inviting about 200 for the first launch. After that, I plan to have a sort of a public show, or sort of a public, accommodate the public also in a place like the public library auditorium. That will be followed up. But on the 27th, just to fall in line with the 2nd anniversary of the famous bond scam, we are launching the book.
Indeed, a very good day, Mr. Thennakoon. So it will revive some sort of memories as well.
Yes. It is written in... pardon me?
Will it be at 11:30?
Far as the public is not invited to the event, so it's no point of mentioning the time.
No, but I thought it would coincide perfectly with the anniversary.
Mr. Thennakoon, the book of yours that is going to be published, why is it different than what people already know?
Well, there are so many things.
We know there was a bond controversy that took place. We know the money that was lost. We know that the governor has a relationship with perpetual treasuries. We know that the governor is guilty of certain elements with regard to conflict of interest. Why is your book different?
But what I thought was, there are so many things that the public and the people who are even criticizing and talking about the issues have missed in this thing. Now, for one to know those things, one will have to study the evidence that has been led in the COPE committees. So I took the trouble in going through the evidence, verbatim evidence, page by page, and I found there are so many things that should be brought to light to be told to the people. Let the people know who wanted to defend this, the people who are alleged, and why did they do it, and how did they attempt to do that. So these things will have to be shown with evidence. It's very easy now. My task is very easy because the evidence of the COPE committee is there verbatim on
now
record.
I was to ask you, who defended these individuals? Why did they defend these individuals, and how did they do it? But before all that, tell me, who is directly responsible?
Definitely the mistake from the beginning was the minister in charge, the Prime Minister himself, who as the minister in charge of the central bank, and who being the person who appointed the governor of the central bank, it is public knowledge that it was his friend, it was his choice, he brought him, he imported him, and he planted him in the central bank. And when the first allegations were brought, and when the president himself gave instructions that an inquiry should be held, if it was done in the proper way, all these problems for the government would never have risen. Would never have risen. And furthermore, it could have also prevented a second bond scam, a repeated event, a repeat performance in March 2016 by the same parties, in the same manner, and to a worst extent. So therefore, I think we have to point the finger at the persons, the politicians who are responsible for this, for not taking the proper action at the proper time. This has to be, this is the bare truth of this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rishabal Thenakon. I now move my attention to Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. When will we see an end to this? When, Dr. Vijayawardena?
Why do you want to see an end, Samir?
I want to see an end very soon, not discuss about this matter. Put this behind us and move forward.
Well, of course, I mean, scandals have taken place in this country before this. Scandals will take place in this country after this also. But of course, what matters to us is that Central Bank of Sri Lanka is a holy institution, which is being looked up to by people in this country, people outside this country, all the stakeholders, all the international lending institutions. They have a stake in the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. So we have to maintain the highest level of integrity in the eyes of all these stakeholders. So what has happened in this particular instance is we have simply created a dent in the good name of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and that has to be repaired as fast as possible. Now there was a mention about this, the credit card bill and so forth of the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. I can give you a good example. A governor was fired from the Central Bank of Sri Lanka for a lesser offence than that. Mr. Vijayawardena was removed from the governorship. His crime was he had spoken to the manager of the Standard Chartered Bank and asked a bank loan for his wife. In 1953, he was removed from the position. I mean, today, of course, that's a normal thing. The governor of somebody in the central bank might speak to a bank manager and ask for a loan for a friend or somebody. But he was removed from that because at that time, in 1950s, the government thought that that kind of irregularity would damage the good name of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and therefore a special commission of inquiry is appointed. It was published as a sessional paper. It was in the public domain. And then the Governor General, Saulio Gunathilaka, removed him. So because of this reason, the government has to take action as quickly as possible because as Rusiripar mentioned just a little while ago, when the news of the first bond scam hit the market, that was not on 9th of March as you said, Samir, on the very same day, by about 3 o'clock, there were all kinds of SMS circulating, and I also got SMS. Everyone who was concerned about the financial sector, they got SMS saying that one particular primary dealer has got 5 billion out of 10, and the price was 90 when it could have been sold for 120, and they had made a big money, and the particular primary dealer on the very same day had sold the right of the treasury bonds to Bank of Ceylon. So So this is what the Prime Minister would have taken, immediately. He would have taken action on that particular occasion, because if the governor was not involved in that, he could have actually taken the tender board which has determined the particular tender to the task. But that was not adopted, and as a result, as we all know, the particular bond scam has continued, and EPF was one of the victims, and there were second bond scam in March 2016, and before that there had been this pumping and dumping strategy, and because when you plot the yield curve of the bond issues, you will find that immediately before the bond issue the price will go down, but after the bond issue the price will go back to the original level again, because when the price went down they had purchased it, when the price went up they have sold it back to the EPF. So these are the kinds of scandals that we have learned, Samir. So we have to put a stop to that. To do that, the whole community, the nation will have to unite itself.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Jayawardena, for your thoughts in the final round. Senior Attorney at Law, Mr. Govindasri, I want to start off your final thoughts with a quote. A pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The realist adjusts the sails. How can this government adjust the sails and move forward? Let's not talk about optimism and pessimism. Let's talk about being realistic. How can you change the sails?
Let's take the middle part. As far as I can see, a lot of credit for this particular transaction should go to the media. And when I say media, Shaukat, you can correct me, it's I think your news media and Financial Times that have been at the forefront. Unfortunately, this issue still remains a Colombo-based issue. So the politicians are not concerned, and I hope Mr. Rusiripala's book, which he's going to put out in Sinhalese, will reach the masses, because here is a massive scandal that has to be handled. And I think, if not for the media, this would have been another dead issue. And not only you and Shaukat, but also I think your proprietors need a big pat on their back for not being afraid to go against the government, against important people in this transaction, and giving the freedom of people to express their views. Secondly, I think the time has come when we have to get on fast track. And fast track can only come through a commission, again, where 2 or 3 people have a reputation to maintain. If they lose that reputation, I'll be first to beat them up. And remember, they have to deliver goods, and they have to deliver goods within time. And thirdly, I think I can see the President emerging in this issue ahead of the Prime Minister. So far, I think the President and the Prime Minister were sailing along. This is not the first issue. This is a series of issues. First was the appointment of the present governor. I don't think, if not for the President's intervention, Mr. Kumarasamy would ever have been appointed. Though Mr. Vikram Singh says he's a dear friend. Sometimes dear friends are forgotten when dear friends are more correct than otherwise. Secondly, I also think that when it came to the other issue, the question of the 6-man committee, which was going to be tabled in the month of January, what did the President do? He said, you can't continue with that debate, and he got his provincial councils to beat it down. And thirdly, this issue. I think if the 2 commissioners act correctly and properly, I'm not thinking or suggesting any verdict to them. I think the Prime Minister will be in a hot soup. And the President, if he acts as he is now showing that he will emerge well ahead of the Prime Minister.
Or else you would beat them up.
Not beat them up. I will beat only the commissioners whom I have so much respect for now because of my experience with them. I will think that not only will I lose confidence in them, I will lose confidence in the whole system. I am trying to keep my spirits alive, hoping this commission will do something good for the country, and that will be another fresh beginning where commissions and individuals can emerge like Mr. Vijayawardena, Mr. Rusiripala. That is very necessary, and the media must back them up to the field.
Thank you very
Shamir.
much. Thank you very much, Mr. Govindasri. It's always nice to have you on the show, and thank you very much, Dr. W. Vijayawardena, for joining us. It's always important to hear your side of the story, because you've been in the central bank for 37 years, and thank you very much for joining us during the last 1.5 years on the show and telling the public as to what exactly happened with regard to the bond scam. And thank you very much, Mr. Supal Thanakul. Looking forward for the book as well. Do you want to thank anyone?
Oh my God, I have to thank many people.
Very quickly, I'm going to give you
I
10
have to
seconds.
thank many people, particularly the Sirasa media and the MTV and the Newsline staff and everybody for promoting me, encouraging me to write this book.
Thank you very much, Mr. Supal Thanakul, for our thoughts as well. Also always joining us and being a part of Face the Nation, as well as Newsline, hosted by Faraz. Young Faraz? No, I don't want to say that. But thank you very much for joining us this evening on this. Thank you very much, Chaturanga. Faraz, I have a question for you, the young Faraz. Faraz, interestingly, the former Deputy Governor, Arjun Mahendra, comes into the spotlight every single time we speak about a controversy in the central bank. However, former Governor Arjun Mahendra comes into the spotlight every single time we speak of a controversy in the central bank. However, the previous regime, Governor Ajit Niwad Cabral too, had a lot of accusations. Is he smart to get away, or is he? Has he done his job?
Do you like cooking?
I don't, Faraz.
No. In that case, you may not know the qualities of Teflon. Teflon is non-stick. So this government, after 2 years, hasn't been able to prove one iota. And therefore, we will have to presume that Mr. Cabral is innocent until otherwise proven.
And that applies to the former governor of the central bank as well, Faraz. Agreed?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening as well. I promised Faraz that I'm going to ask that question. So with that note, we'll leave you tonight as far as Face the Nation is concerned. Faraz, tomorrow's guest.
Yes, is the chairman of the National Law Conference, Mr. Chandaka Jayasundra, and the president of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, Mr. Jeffrey Alagaratnam. Will be interviewed by the wonderful Sonali Wanigabaduge, even though it is Valentine's Day.
It's always nice to have a lady presenting the show on Valentine's Day for us, for sure. We spoke of ex-girlfriends, and there you go, you have a lady presenting Newsline tomorrow morning. We leave you tonight with a quote. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. A good government delivers on its promises. A good government nourishes the need of its people, has transparency and integrity, and creates provisions for challenging its leadership openly. A good government expands the freedoms as well-being of its members rather than limit them. Take care and good night.